Hey everyone, welcome to Career Design Talks. My name is Chanmugham. I'm an executive career coach, and today on today's show we have Chris Holliday and Natasha Alladina joining us for our conversation today, which is all about 3 ways to ace your next virtual interview. This is going to be a great show. Our two guests are experts in this field, so I'll let them introduce themselves. But you're in for a treat. Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Chris Holliday. I'm an executive coach. I've been coaching and training in leadership and communications for about 6 years. And even longer than that, I have been a working New York City actress, film and television mostly. And then before that, I spent a good 2 decades in marketing management and marketing consulting. So, what I like to do is bring all of that information and experience to helping people look and sound and come across as their best on camera, in interviews, and on the job.
Great, great. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Natasha, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Alladina, and I'm a legal recruiter with the Partners Group, which is a legal recruiting boutique that places folks, lawyers across the country. And I've been doing that for a little while, and I just launched my own business called Grit and Gravitas, which focuses on resume writing and interview coaching specifically for lawyers. I'm a former lawyer myself. I practiced in a variety of capacities, but I really love helping people find the careers of their dreams and tell their career stories in a way that'll land them the jobs that they want. So really excited about this session, and thanks for having me, Mo.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as you can see, we've got some great panelists here, some guest speakers that can really speak to this idea of how do you perform well on camera, how do you do a great interview. So with that, I just want to give you a little overview of what we're going to talk about today. Really, this is for people who want to learn how to prepare for their upcoming interviews. Obviously, we're in this world of everything's on Zoom, so we're going to be talking about how to approach the interview process from a mindset standpoint, how to build your confidence before you step into an interview. How do you perform on camera? How do you make sure you look your best and sound your best? And we're also going to talk about how do you answer those common interview questions that you're going to face in these upcoming interviews that you have. So what we're going to start with is part one, which is about having more confidence in the interview. How do you want to even approach the interview before it starts? And so when I work with my clients, sure, a lot of people are concerned about what they're going to say, but where I really like to start my clients is helping them think about how they want to even enter the room. So before the conversation even starts, it's really about having the right mindset that's going to make sure you leave a great impression. And so one sort of saying I like to give my clients is you want to put yourself in the driver's seat. And the reason why I say that is because most people who are going in for interviews, they're naturally a little nervous, a little apprehensive. Here they are, they're going into the employer. It feels like the employer has all the power. And so they're almost intuitively just waiting for the interviewer to take control and kind of drive the bus here. And what I say is, sure, absolutely, the interviewer has questions that they want to ask you, but really you can also step into this, like the minute you step into the room, you can also approach it from the standpoint of having the right mindset of I'm going to be in the driver's seat, which to me looks like I want to make sure that I approach this conversation, make sure I'm upbeat, smiling, friendly, greeting my interviewer as soon as we connect on Zoom, thanking them for their time, using their name, and really sort of using that first few seconds to really connect with them, show my gratitude, show I'm thankful for them. So that's the piece of really owning how you start the conversation, not just sort of sitting back nervously waiting for them to start. I'm wondering what you guys might think of that advice that I share with clients or that strategy.
Yeah, I love that advice because you're going in with the intention of exuding confidence. Right?
Hmm.
Make that first move, you greet them by their name, you're smiling. It shows that you're a confident candidate, and confidence sells, so does enthusiasm.
Right.
So I think the more that you can harness that before you go in, the better off you'll feel and the better off you'll perform.
There are also studies that say that people hire people they like. And
Hmm.
so connecting with them one-on-one by saying their name, eye contact, smiling, those are all likability things that will really help them in the interview process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, And so when it goes to how to continuing with this sort of confidence piece and the mindset piece, one thing I like to also coach clients on is this idea of how do you start and end the interview. And this really speaks to more of the answers that you'll give, and we'll probably touch on this in more detail in part 3 here. But I like to think about the standpoint of, most people remember the first thing you say and the last thing you say. So you want to come in having prepared both those statements, having a clear sort of tell me about yourself answer and a clear sort of why I should hire you closing answer. You want to leave them with a strong note. So I like to have them focus on some of those bookend moments of the conversation. And then another piece I give them, this is more of like a visual, is imagine you finish the interview. It's a great interview. That hiring manager or recruiter leaves to go talk to the hiring manager. What do you want that recruiter to say about you? How do you want them to sort of communicate what a great conversation they had with you? How do you want them to describe you as a person, your personality? That's a great way to sort of imagine the future that you want, and then make sure that your language, your body language, your energy, your answers match that. What do you guys think about that strategy?
Fully support that strategy. In fact, I would go a step further and have them actually visualize those conversations happening outside of the room and get in touch with how that makes them feel. And then when they come into the Zoom room, they're bringing that enthusiasm, confidence, and energy of a successful outcome. Love it.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I mean, I hadn't thought about that before, but what is the impression you want to leave with, right? What do you want them to say about you? I also think that can help you prepare at the beginning too, if you're thinking that way, right? Like, who is going to be the ideal candidate? And of course, you want to be true to yourself and honor your own experience. But if you're thinking about who would make a good impression here, it'll help you better tell your story in a way that will align with what they're looking for. So I love that advice.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll just share this one last piece I like about thinking about mindset is I just helped a client. She's a sort of healthcare finance leader, has been out of work for about a year simply because she took maternity leave. But because she's been out of work for a year, she's feeling very sort of, her confidence is down when it comes to interviewing again. She feels like she's been out of the game for a while. She's also not sure the type of jobs she wants. So there's like a confidence issue, which I think a lot of people can relate to there, whether you're taking off maternity leave or not, right? There's always sort of an inherent confidence issue there in the interview process. And so she just had a conversation with the CFO of a big hospital through her network. It was more of a casual introduction. It wasn't about a specific job. So she was actually nervous because she wasn't sure how to prepare, right? She didn't have like a target job to talk about and pitch herself for. So what we worked on mindset wise was we did a lot of practice, but what I noticed with her was she was all about asking for the job or wanting the job. And I started to use the analogy of dating and marriage. And she was making the mistake. She was making the mistake that most job seekers do, where they want the job. Obviously, they want the job, right? But they were just jumping to job, right? They were jumping to marriage before they even just like built a connection or built a relationship with the person that they're talking to. So using that analogy, we talked about how she could really present herself in the best way that would make the CFO want to learn more about her, want to understand more about how she could fit into his company based on the questions that she asked, and things like that, right? So it was more about her asking really great questions so that the CFO would be attracted to her versus her asking about, hey, I'm looking for work. Where can you fit me into your company, right? So she really approached it. I changed her perspective from that of almost like a desperate job seeker to more of a confident professional. And I'm wondering what you think of that strategy.
Oh my gosh, it's such a winner. You definitely have to build those one-on-one connections, and you have to look at it as a relationship, because I work with so many women in particular who get into an organization and then are not happy with it because they didn't ask the right questions and
Right.
they didn't see it. They didn't find that opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would also say one other thing is, in addition to building relationships, you're telling your story. An interview it's a two-way street, right? As Chris just said, you want to make sure it's the right environment for you. So you tell your story, even if there isn't a job description to go off of. They want to get to know you. So having a really solid sense of who you are, what your experience has been, and what you have to offer, and putting that out and going back to that first thing we talked about with confidence, that is really going to set the stage for you. And as Chris also said earlier, people hire people they like. So if you go in, you confidently tell your story, and people can see that, oh, wow, this is what this person has to offer, you're much more likely to land a job, even if there isn't a specific job description, because again, it's all about relationships and people hire who they like.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you said something really important there, which is framing it in a way of here's what I have to offer, not here's what I need from you. So I think, and that actually really made the difference for her. She came back and reported with some good news that it was a great conversation. The CFO loved her, and he's looking to try and figure out where where she can fit into his department. So it's like we got the win, but it came from a very different place.
Well, I'm
So
glad she worked with you then, Mo, because that sounds like that was good.
yeah, no, it worked out really well for her. So let's move on to number 2 here. Our second topic of today is how to feel more comfortable on camera. And Chris, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. So what I want to cover today are a couple of things that will help you optimize your virtual presence, as I like to call it, in a way that allows you to connect with the person you're interviewing with, convey confidence, and inspire trust. Because basically, if they don't trust you, they're not going to hire you. So it starts with your camera. And the camera on your laptop is pretty much most of the time below your face. So you're going to need to raise that camera up, raise the laptop up, maybe depending on the height of the camera, your height, maybe a good 6 inches, and make sure it's clean. We carry these things around all day and we smudge the lens with the oils on our hands. Starting with a clean lens starts with a clean slate. The other thing is you want to angle the lens so that you are getting a nice clean shot. You want to about a hand's width distance, definitely no more than a hand's width distance between the top of your head and the top of the screen. So you've got enough room to be expressive physically, and also you want the lighting to be coming from in front of your face, not from behind, not from on top, so that you don't have weird shadows going on and they can really see you. If they can't see you, they're not going to trust you. The other lighting tips is, you don't have to go out and buy ring lights and stuff. Great if you want to, but a good old table lamp. I've got a table lamp on my right, a ring lamp on the left, and I'm evenly lit on both sides. You can see my face. Then you need to pay attention to background. Your background needs to be free of clutter. It needs to say, I'm at home, but I'm reliable. I'm going to be working, and you can trust that I'm going to be here. And this is how I'm going to show up for your clients. This is how I'm going to show up for anybody I'm working with. I show up as a professional. And then you want to think about your sound. The microphone on our laptop has most microphones on the laptop reduce a lot of the mid-tone and bass tones that come through. And so I strongly recommend an external mic, particularly when you're interviewing. You want to create that full connection. You want to make it as if you're in the room together, as close as possible. And the sound goes a long way toward that. And you can use as simple as a pair, well, that's 2 pairs, but your pair of a headset from your iPhone, because it eliminates background noise, which is fantastic. And it also brings a richer sound to your voice. You want to also be able to use your body language. You want to, I covered that. You want to cover your face if or hide self view if that's distracting to you. You want to sit up nice and straight, sit up but not rigid. And you want to smile, show that confidence, show that connection, be likable, right? And that goes to prep. The prep that Mo talked about, absolutely. And on top of that, some things that actors do on before they get on camera are really valuable. One is breathing. Yeah, I know, we all breathe, right? But breathing in a way that reduces the nerves that come with being on camera and being in a situation where you're being judged, that's terrifying. So you take the way that we do this in acting world is a 4x4 or box breathing. You inhale to the count of 4 and fill those lungs all the way to the bottom so that that oxygen reaches your brain. You're going to need it, right? So inhale to 4, hold for 4, exhale to 4, and hold for 4, and repeat until you really feel your body going, ah, yes, I've got this. Even better if you use the Amy Cuddy Superwoman pose that's been, so the research is not clear on this, but in her research, she showed that if you hold a power pose for 2 to 3 minutes before you do an interview, those interviews are more likely to choose you than somebody who didn't take that confident stand. I think it's an absolute must, especially now that you're not in a waiting room with 30 other people. You can do that as you're doing the breathing. Also, warm up your breath, warm up your vocal cords. Don't let the interview be the first time you speak during the day so that you have a nice, full, rich voice. And then my last tip before I turn it over to you guys, because I want to hear your reactions to this, put a Post-it note on your laptop. Use the technology. Put a Post-it note with your top 3 points that you want to get across, and have stories for those that you're like, those that's just the trigger, but you know, you've got your cheat sheet right there. I've got more on rehearsal and stuff, but I'll leave it there. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I got so much out of that. I know, one thing that stood out to me was the idea of even practicing probably before you get on camera with the interviewer, like turn it on, see what your background looks like, see what your lighting looks like. I unfortunately need some better lighting in my conference room here, but that's another story. But that's such a good point, right? It's like you have the opportunity to practice here. One thing I didn't know was how the difference between the microphone that's just on the laptop, and I'm using my Mac laptop here, versus having an external mic or the headphones, and how much it helps. So when you say it takes out sort of the levels in your voice, can you say a little bit more about that and what the difference is and how people come
Yeah,
across different?
you lose the bass and midtones when you're using the laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And then with an external microphone, it just sort of brings that richness and fullness of your real voice. So you don't sound so distant. It brings you closer to the person. It's the connection thing.
Yeah, and I can certainly tell. I can hear that difference when I hear people's recordings, and they're just like they're like right in my ear. Sometimes, some podcasts I listen to, I could tell where they're using good equipment versus probably not. You can really tell the difference.
Yeah.
I did not know that microphone device either, so it's making me think I want to go get a microphone. And also, I did know the hand. I'm glad I was just checking to see if I have like hands width. So those are some great tips. As is the breathing. That's something that we all forget to do because we tense up before an interview. It's natural to be nervous. You could be the best interviewee in the world, but it's natural to just feel that level of stress or nervousness. So that breathing tip is fantastic. I also didn't know about the Superman, Superwoman pose. I love that.
Check out Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on power posing and what it does for confidence. Awesome.
I'm going to have to check that out. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because me, the one thing I've been doing to prep is I have my pump up song, right? Like,
yes.
Like DJ Khaled's All I Do Is Win. I'll blast that and just and that'll get me amped up.
Whatever it takes. I have been known to jump on the bed to get my energy going before I get in front of a group.
Yeah. I love that advice because it's a performance. At the end of the day, it's a performance, right? Like that's why I love your perspective as an actress, because we have to think through, we want to be our best, and how do we channel what we need so that we can perform at our best. So I love all those tips.
Yeah. Last tip, as Mo alluded to, get with a friend who will tell you the truth. How do I look on camera? Rate me. There's also a user on Twitter called Room Rater, and they rate people's rooms, and you can see what people, what the professionals are looking for. Don't take my word for it. Go get it.
I've seen that Twitter handle.
Yeah. Oh, and then in case anyone doesn't know, Zoom has a touch-up feature, which I always turn that on because it blurs you. It makes you look a little nicer. I mean, one thing Chris and I were talking about before this call is I didn't have lipstick on. I went and put it on, and I promise I look like
and you feel better, right? Because you know you look better.
Yeah. So whatever it is that you have, like that you like to do to make yourself, when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, I look good. Whatever you got to do for that, do that as long as it's interview
Wear
appropriate.
the colors that you know makes you look your best.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Give yourself every shot.
Yeah, yeah. Chris, I think I'm so glad we have you here because I'm surprised by how some people show up on camera. It's like here we are. It's like you're going to be on camera, whether it's an interview process or just a meeting, and people. I don't know if they don't care or they just don't know that they should be thinking about these things. So, I think this is such an important message to get out to our interviewees and especially the lighting thing too. I just people don't know or don't think about sort of the proper lighting in the room.
Yeah.
So I see that as a huge mistake all the time, where it's just like too much shadow, or they're sitting in front of a beautiful window with the sun shining right in. And for my clients, we work on that because I tell them what it looks like, and it might feel good, or it might look like you might think it looks good because you're sitting in front of your beautiful window, but that's actually a terrible place to sit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are super important tips.
And who would you rather hire? The person you can see or the person you can't?
Right. Or the person who knows the difference. Right. Because you said another good point of this is what I'm going to look like when I'm talking to your clients. Which is something that again, another thing that most people don't think about, but that's very true, right? This is how I'm going to show up representing your company. And so what do you think, right? You want to give them that great first impression.
It's an audition as much as an interview.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was a lot of great information right there. Okay. So now we've talked about confidence. We've talked about how to show up and look good on camera. Now we're going to talk about sort of the meat of the interview, the one thing that everyone has questions about, which is how to answer these common interview questions that come up in interviews. So Natasha, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So we're pumped up at this point, right? We're feeling good. We're feeling confident. We're feeling prepared with our tech. And now we got to answer those questions. So what is the key to successfully answering common interview questions? This is not going to be a surprise to anyone, but it's preparation. And what do we mean by preparation? It's research. It's researching yourself, right? It's reviewing your resume. It's reviewing your cover letter if you turn one of those in. It's researching the company or organization you're applying to, and then researching your interviewers too. And I'm not talking stalker level, but enough information for you to understand what they do and hopefully to find some commonalities that you could, throw in to kind of build more of a genuine relationship. And as you're preparing, you want to anticipate the likely questions that are going to come up, and you want to come up with what I call a bank of stories or examples that illustrate both your soft and hard skills. And the reason I say that is because your goal is to show that you have the skills, you have the culture fit, rather than just tell it. It's the difference between describing yourself by 3 or 4 adjectives and then giving anecdotal examples of how you exude those adjectives. Humans love stories, so the best way to prepare is to anticipate those questions and have a bank of stories that you could use no matter what the question is. And I'd love to hear, from the two of you, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, stories. I do the same prep with my clients. It's about let's prepare. You want to have these stories in your back pocket. It's easy to pull out. And I think things you can anticipate when you do go for interviews are questions about your ability to work with others, to deal with difficult people, to handle challenges. You want to have those stories where you've overcome a challenge and share that with them. Because to your point, telling someone that you can handle challenges is one thing, but telling them a story about how you met this impossible deadline and worked well with your teammates, that brings it across so much better, right? It turns your sort of skills into real life.
Enthusiastic 2 thumbs up for that, Natasha. I mean, it is all about story. We are wired, our brains are wired for story. And those are the things that an interviewer is going to remember about you. Mm-hmm. It's not the data points, the bullets on your resume. They're going to remember the stories you told. So absolutely prepare those stories.
Right.
Yeah. So, we mentioned what types of questions to expect. Mo definitely brought us into that, right? How did you overcome an obstacle? Giving a story, an example of how you overcame it. A few others to prepare for, and I'm sure we've all experienced these over the years. Tell me about yourself. That's the biggest one. We'll dive into that one just a little bit. So tell me about yourself, strengths and weaknesses. Tell me about, a recent problem, a tough problem you worked on and how you went about resolving it, how you've handled a difficult working relationship. I think Mo spoke to that as well. Or how have you managed multiple deadlines or priorities? What's your working style? And then more importantly, with respect to the place you're applying, why do you want to work here? Why should we hire you? Why are you leaving your current role? And if you're relocating, why do you want to relocate? So those are some of the common questions that you can expect that you could start thinking through answers for. And the biggest one I think that I've seen a lot of people struggle with is that tell me about yourself question, right? This can go so many different ways. I've seen people launch into, well, I was born in, whatever town, and they'll walk you through their entire life story. The problem with that is you're going to lose your interviewer. As much as we know our own stories and, we want to give detail, there's an appropriate balance of how much detail to give in that tell me about yourself. Your goal with that tell me about yourself question is to quickly walk through your experience and what you consider to be your strongest selling points. This is your first opportunity. That question usually comes at the beginning or towards the beginning of an interview. And that's your opportunity to really sell yourself. So it's not the time, as Mo said, not the time to rehash your resume or, again, to get into too many personal details. What you want to do is give the interviewers a taste of who you are and what you bring to the table. It's also a really good time to show enthusiasm. So what I like to advise folks is at the end of your tell me about yourself, bring it back to why you're applying for this job and why you're excited for the job. And I'd love to hear from Mo and Chris, so, any other thoughts on that tell me about yourself question that can get folks a little nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. And that last point you made about bringing it back to why you want to work there, I think is so critical because, with the interview prep that I do with clients, they'll start with answering the tell me about yourself question. And because they're not sure where to end, it kind of trails off. And
right.
I don't know if they've stopped talking or not. And so we have a good laugh there in practice with clients, but because most people aren't sure how to end that question. And so we talk exactly about that, about having a strong ending, which is tying it back to the company. And so this is why I'd like to work for XYZ company or whoever you're, speaking to. So that's a great, I think a really good point there.
Yeah, I agree with Mo. And Natasha, you're absolutely spot on. I like to tell people that when you're preparing a story or a presentation, anything, you want to ask yourself 3 questions. What do I want my audience to do? What do they need to know? And how do I want them to feel? And that need to know is really critical in honing the information that you're gonna tell them. And then how you want them to feel is all about, like you said, telling the story with enthusiasm, but really making sure you cull the information to absolutely what it is they need to know to make the hiring decision. Just makes it a no-brainer. And then, like Mo said, having a strong close that ties back to the point that you want to make. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And those 3 questions, Chris, those are phenomenal. I'm going to keep those in mind as well. Okay. So answering a few other questions, how do you answer questions about your prior experience? Your prior experience, this is where having that strong set or bank of stories comes in. So think about questions that go to your strengths and weaknesses, a recent project you worked on, difficult working relationships, or handling multiple deadlines. As I mentioned before, adjectives just don't cut it. You want to paint a picture by telling a story that illustrates the soft and hard skills they're looking for. For instance, with what's your greatest weakness, or tell me about a difficult working relationship that you had. You want to tell them an example of, you lay out the weakness or you lay out the situation of the difficult working relationship, but then tell them how you resolved or overcame that weakness or difficult working relationship. You want to show how you work through problems and come to results. And Mo mentioned that earlier. So I'd, love to hear a little more from the 2 of you about how to answer questions about prior experience. Anything else that folks can do to set themselves up to have a great answer?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it right there with the idea of, because people get so thrown off by the weakness question. It's like who really wants to reveal that, right? But your point is, it's a great opportunity for you to tell people how you've learned, how you've grown, how you've overcome weaknesses. So framing it in that sort of story framework of here's something that I struggled with in the past, and here's how I overcame it is, it's a great way to package that answer.
Yeah, I concur with the learning and showing that you're a person who does like to learn, and even talking about like, so as a result of overcoming that weakness, I now and present a strength, like kind of flip it a little bit,
Mhm.
but also the opportunity to show that you are a person that is constantly learning, and maybe that's why I got a coach, or maybe that's why I attend one self-development conference every year. Something that shows who you are at your core.
Absolutely. I've seen folks be able to turn that weakness into a strength, and it's just so compelling. And, it's not going to work in every situation, but if you can make that happen, you're golden. So, last point here, guys, how to answer questions about why that organization, why you're leaving your current role, why you want to relocate, for instance. From first, you're like, well, stories aren't as helpful for those types of answers. Maybe so, but preparation is, right? You want to be specific, you want to be honest, and you want to be positive in your answer. So when you're talking about leaving your current role, you never want to bash your company, but you want to talk about what you've learned there and how you've grown there and how you're excited to apply what you've learned in that role and your skill set that you've obtained in that role to this new position. So it's always about bringing it back to a positive and explaining, hey, I'm really excited about this opportunity, because again, enthusiasm can really sell. So with those questions about why this company, why you're leaving, try to bring it back to that positive end point. So, you're not just saying, oh, well, I'm looking at moving, or I feel like I've learned all I can. It can really put a damper on an overall positive interview experience. And Mo and Chris, if you have any thoughts on those types of questions.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering. I actually wanted to ask you, what are some good examples? So that question of why do you want to work here? Sometimes people get tripped up by that because they make it about them. I want to work here because it'll be great. It'll be great for me, right? It's the next step I want to take in my career. And I'm wondering, what are some good answers or examples of answers that you've heard for that answer?
Yeah. So key for preparing for that answer is preparation, right? Some people just look at a company website. I don't think that's enough. You want to look at the company website. You want to see if you have any connections that work there and reach out to them ahead of time just to ask them why you like working there. You want to Google the company. It's a big thing to do, but you can, learn some current news about the company. And a great example of this, I actually just spoke with someone who interviewed with a company, and she answered that question by saying, the culture here. I've read about how you all are responding to current events, and I don't see other companies in this space doing that. And to me, that really says so much about this company's core values and how much they match with mine. That kind of answer is not one that I think they hear every day. I think they probably hear this company has a really great product, and those are fine answers too. But if you can really hone in on something that will evoke even an emotional connection, if you can, that can really be a game changer. So that's an example I would give. And Chris, or even Mo, if you have another, I think that would be a great way to help folks see how that question can be framed and answered.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Natasha. I think first of all, knowing yourself and then conveying that you do know yourself and how you relate to their corporate culture is huge. I think fit is something that a lot of people overlook to their detriment later on down the road. And so looking at it now just shows some executive maturity that is really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Natasha, you shared a lot there, a lot of great ways to answer these common interview questions. So, I'd like to start wrapping it up by kind of summarizing. We've shared a lot of good information here. And so, if we could just go through a quick summary of what we learned, so some nice takeaways for everyone. So, I'll start with the confidence piece. If there's one thing I want you to walk away with here, is really understanding that you can own this conversation. You don't have to be nervous about it. You don't have to sort of continue just to worry about what the other person's going to say. You can really step into this conversation, like I said, put yourself in the driver's seat and really own how you want to show up, how you want to make the other person feel, what you want them to say about you afterwards. So if there's one thing about confidence I want you to take away, is that you've got the power to have a great conversation with this person.
And I'll say, I really want you to optimize your virtual presence so that you can connect with the person you're interviewing with, inspire confidence, inspire trust, by looking and sounding your absolute best and doing the preparation it takes, all of it, the on-camera piece, the breathing, just be in the interview fully knowing that you've done everything you can to look and sound and tell your best stories.
Yeah, and Chris, you kind of led perfectly into my, big piece of advice that I'd love people to take away. And that's those stories, really thinking about your career, thinking about moments you're proud of, moments where you learned, and using that to come up with stories that'll serve you no matter what the question, right? You'll however a question is framed, if you have a solid set of stories, you will have answers that you can draw from, strong answers. So I would say put the time into developing those stories and then practice saying them out loud so you can finesse them, right? The first time shouldn't be during the interview. You want to practice those. And think, as Chris mentioned, think about who you are, know yourself, and your answers will just become stronger because of it.
Great. Thank you. So before we go, I'd love for you guys to share both about where can people find you, learn more about you, sign up to work with you. Feel free to share your information.
Sure. My name is Chris Holliday with 2 L's. You can find me on LinkedIn. My website is under development. The company name, you can look for it later, is Elevated Perspectives. And you can email me at Holliday with 2 L's at gmail.com.
Great. And I'll share all those details in the show notes as well.
Great.
Awesome. So you can find me 2 different ways. If you're looking for legal recruiting help, that is my day job. And you can find me, Natasha Alladina, at the Partners Group. And if you're a lawyer specifically, because I do work specifically with lawyers, if you're looking for resume writing help or interview coaching, you can find me at my company name, which is Grit and Gravitas. It's just gritandgravitas.com, and my email is natasha@gritandgravitas.com.
Great. Well, again, thank you both for joining us today. I think we shared some really great information. So with that, I'll say bye, and we're out.